47 people had been waiting for 3 hours. Dean Martin had been waiting for 3 hours. And when the actor finally walked in, he did not apologize. He did not even look at them. Nobody kept Dean Martin waiting on his own set. Nobody had ever tried. This man tried. On a Tuesday morning in October, in front of 47 people, with his sunglasses on and his coffee in hand. One man thought his talent gave him permission to waste other people's time. One man had been on set since before sunrise. Only one of them knew how the next 60 seconds were going to end. It was not the man who had just arrived. What Dean Martin said in the next 5 words did not just end one man's morning. It ended something else entirely. And the man who heard those words spent the next 38 years trying to understand what they had cost him. Columbia Pictures, Burbank, 1965. Hollywood was changing. The old studio system was breaking down. A new generation of actors believed they were bigger than the work. Some of them were right. Most of them were wrong. The ones who were wrong did not find out all at once. They found out slowly, over a career, over a series of rooms that gradually stopped wanting them, over a reputation that got built one morning at a time, one late arrival at a time, one unacknowledged crew at a time. Richard Hale was building that reputation. He did not know it yet. Dean Martin was 48 years old, star and producer on this film. He had started as a nightclub singer in rooms where nobody was paying attention. He had worked bad rooms. Rooms that were more interested in the food than in him. Rooms where nobody looked up from their drinks. Rooms that taught him something you cannot learn in a classroom. That the crew is the show. That the people who set up the lights and adjust the sound and run the cables and stand behind the cameras are not supporting you. You are supporting each other. Without them, you are nobody. With them, you are everything. He had never forgotten that. Not once. Not in 20 years of stages and sets and hotel rooms and television studios. Not on any morning. Not on this one. Richard Hale was 32. 3 films behind him. A name people were beginning to recognize. Who had confused recognition with authority. Who had started believing the rules that applied to everyone else did not apply to him. He was about to find out they did. The crew was 47 people. Most of them had families. Most of them had been there since 6 in the morning. All of them were watching. All of them had already decided something about this morning. Something about Richard Hale. Something that was going to stay with them. You know that feeling when someone wastes your time. Not an accident. Not an emergency. Just carelessness. Just the assumption that your time matters less than theirs. Now multiply that by 47 people. By 3 hours. By the knowledge that nobody is going to say anything. That is exactly where Dean Martin was. At 10 in the morning. On a Tuesday. In October. Tuesday morning, October, 1965. Columbia Pictures, Burbank. 6:55 in the morning. Dean Martin was already on set. Not because he had to be. Because that was who he was. He had a rule. The crew arrived at 6. He arrived before them. Not to supervise. To signal. To make clear that the work mattered. That everyone in that building mattered. That the man whose name was on the poster was not above the contract. He was inside it. With everyone else. The lights were up. The cameras were positioned. The crew had their coffee. Their marks were set. Everything was ready. The only thing missing was Richard Hale. 7 o'clock came. The assistant director checked his watch, looked at the door, looked back at his clipboard, said nothing. 7:30. Dean was in his chair, reading the script. He had read it before. He was reading it again, not because he needed to, because it was better than looking at the door. The camera operator filled the time adjusting things that did not need adjusting. The makeup artist organized a kit that was already organized. The sound technician ran a check he had already run. Everyone found something to do, because doing something was better than standing still. Standing still meant thinking about what was happening. Thinking about what was happening meant getting angry. And getting angry meant making it a thing. Nobody wanted to make it a thing. They were waiting to see what Dean Martin was going to make it. On the chair next to Dean was a single page from the script. Scene 42, Richard's most important scene. Dean had marked it up the night before. Notes in the margins. Specific ideas for how the scene could work. Things he had thought of in the evening. Things he wanted to discuss with Richard before they shot it. He had been looking forward to it. He folded the page once, put it in his jacket pocket, and waited. 8 o'clock. The crew had stopped pretending to be busy. They were just waiting now. 47 people. All of them knowing what everyone knew but nobody was saying. Dean put the script down. He looked at his production manager. One look. That was all. The production manager picked up the phone. The call came back 10 minutes later. Richard was on his way. He had left his apartment 40 minutes ago. He would be there soon. Dean nodded, put his coffee down, and waited some more. Here is what nobody ever talks about. Dean Martin had been that person once. Not the late one. The waiting one. He had waited in rooms where nobody came, where the man who was supposed to give him a chance simply did not show up. He knew what it felt like. Every person on that crew knew what it felt like. That was why the room was so quiet. Not anger. Recognition. The particular silence of people who have been here before. Who know what this particular waiting costs. Now see it from Richard's side. He was 32 years old. He had 3 films behind him. He was being offered another. And somewhere in those 3 films, he had learned something that was not true. That talent was a kind of permission. That being good at something meant the rules worked differently for you. He had learned this from the wrong people. In rooms that let him get away with things. In rooms that did not say no. In rooms where his name was enough to buy him latitude. He had come to expect latitude. He was about to unlearn it. 9 o'clock came and went. The assistant director said nothing. The camera operator said nothing. Dean Martin said nothing. He sat in his chair. His coffee had gone cold. He did not send for another. He just sat. There is a kind of waiting that is also a statement. Not the waiting of a man who has no options. The waiting of a man who has made a decision and is allowing time to confirm it. Dean Martin was in his 2nd hour of that kind of waiting. His 3rd was beginning. 47 people in that room, all of them watching the door, all of them knowing what was coming, all of them wondering the same thing. What was Dean Martin going to do? What exactly did Dean say? What were the 5 words? Why did he wait 3 hours instead of 1? What was he giving Richard Hale time to do? And why did Richard not take it? The answer was in what happened when the door finally opened. 9 o'clock. 10 o'clock. 3 hours. And then the door opened. Richard walked in, 3 hours late, sunglasses on, coffee in hand. No apology. Nothing, that moment. Richard walking through the door, sunglasses on, coffee in his hand, not looking at anyone. Dean standing up. The set went quiet. Richard did not notice. Dean's chair scraped the floor. 47 people stopped breathing. Dean walked toward Richard. Nobody moved. 47 people. Dean Martin's own set. His name on the poster. His money on the line. And a 32-year-old actor who had walked in with his sunglasses on and had not said a single word to a single person. Dean Martin reached Richard. He stopped. He was close enough that nobody else could hear clearly. But everyone was watching. And everyone understood from Dean's face alone that what was about to happen had already been decided. Dean spoke. Richard Hale had been 3 hours late. He had walked in without an apology, without a word to anyone, without even removing his sunglasses. 47 people had waited. Dean Martin had waited, and now Dean was standing in front of him, close, quiet, decided. Most producers would have argued, would have threatened, would have made it loud. Dean Martin was now most producers. What he said in the next 5 words changed everything that happened after. If stories like this are the kind that stay with you, subscribe. We find the moments that history almost forgot. What Dean said next was something Richard Hale spent 38 years thinking about. Dean Martin looked at Richard Hale, not at his sunglasses, not at his coffee, at him. The way you look at someone when you have already made your decision and you are simply delivering the information. He said 5 words. Quietly, finally, without anger. You are done here. Leave, that was all. 5 words, no explanation, no second chance offered, no room for negotiation. Richard's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. He looked at Dean, then at the crew, then back at Dean. He started to speak. Dean had already turned away. He was walking back to his chair. The conversation was over. Richard had not understood yet that it was over. He stood there for a moment, sunglasses still on, coffee still in hand, in a room full of people who were all looking somewhere else. Nobody spoke. The camera operator looked at his camera. The sound technician looked at his board. The makeup artist looked at her kit. 47 people who had waited 3 hours, who had every right to say something, said nothing, because Dean had said it. 5 words. And 5 words were enough. Richard Hale left the set. He did not slam a door. He did not say anything. He walked out the same way he had walked in, slowly, like he was not sure what had just happened, like the ground had shifted and he was still finding his footing. Dean sat back down in his chair. He reached into his jacket pocket. He took out the folded script page. Scene 42, his notes in the margins. He looked at it for a moment. Then he put it back and turned to his production manager. "Get me someone who wants to be here," he said. That was all. The set went back to work. The camera operator moved back to his camera. The sound technician picked up his headphones. The makeup artist returned to her station. One by one, the 47 people who had been waiting for 3 hours picked up where they had stopped. Not with celebration, not with relief, with work. Because work was why they were there, and work was what had been waiting for them. And now they could do it. The set that afternoon was one of the better days any of them could remember. Not because of what had happened that morning, because of what had been made clear, that the work mattered, that they mattered, that the rules applied equally. A good afternoon is easier to build when everyone in the room understands the same thing. They understood the same thing. Dean Martin had made sure of it, in 5 words, and then by going back to work. You know that moment when you finally say the thing you have been waiting to say. Not loudly, not with anger, just clearly, just finally. The moment when the decision that has been building for 3 hours comes out in 5 words. And the 5 words are exactly right. And you know they are right because of how quietly they come. That was Dean Martin, standing in front of Richard Hale on a Tuesday morning in October. In 1965, Dean Martin had said 5 words. Richard Hale had left the set. But that was not the end of the story. Because what Richard did in the weeks after that morning was something nobody expected. And what Dean did that nobody knew about until years later was the part of the story that changed what those 5 words meant. 5 words on a Tuesday morning. Richard Hale was gone. The set went back to work. But the story was not over, because what happened to Richard after that day was stranger than anyone expected. And what Dean Martin did quietly in the weeks that followed was something nobody knew about for decades. Stay with it. Richard Hale drove home that morning. He had never been sent home before. Not from anything. Not from school. Not from a job. Not from a set. He had always been the one who stayed longest, who worked hardest, who showed up, until he stopped showing up, until he started believing that showing up was for people who did not have what he had. He sat in his car in the parking lot of his apartment building for a long time, not thinking about Dean Martin, thinking about the 47 people, their faces when he had walked in. Not anger, not judgment, something worse. The particular look of people who have stopped expecting anything from you, who have already written you off, who are simply waiting for the inconvenience to end. He had seen that look before. He had never been on the receiving end of it. He thought about the walk-in, the sunglasses, the coffee, the door. He had walked in the way he always walked in, like the room was already his, like everyone in it was an extra in his particular film. He had done that for 2 years. Nobody had ever said anything. Nobody except Dean Martin, in 5 words, without raising his voice, without making it a scene, just 5 words. And then back to work. That afternoon he called his agent. His agent told him what he already knew. Columbia was replacing him. The film would go on without him. His name would not be on it. Richard asked one question. Did Martin say anything about me? His agent paused. He said, Dean Martin said you were done there. That was all he said. Richard hung up. He sat with those 5 words for a long time. There is something about 5 words that is harder than a speech. A speech gives you something to argue with. 5 words give you nothing, just the thing itself, clear, complete. Over, Richard kept finding the edges of those 5 words, and finding that they had no edges. They were a solid fact. The way facts are solid when they are true. 3 weeks later, Richard was on another set. A smaller production, less money. He arrived 45 minutes early. The director noticed, did not say anything, but noticed. Richard noticed that the director noticed, and something small shifted. The way small things shift when a person begins to understand something they should have understood earlier. He stayed until he was dismissed. He prepared. He did the work the way he had been taught to do the work. Before he had decided he was above the work. And the work felt different when you came back to it that way. It felt like his again. Like something he had almost lost the right to and had gotten back through no particular grace of his own. Only through 5 words, and the willingness, eventually, to hear them. Here is what nobody talks about. Richard Hale never spoke publicly about that morning, not for years, not while Dean Martin was alive. He worked steadily, not at the level he had been heading toward, but steadily, and everyone who worked with him after that October said the same thing. He was always early. He was always prepared. He never kept anyone waiting. Those who knew what had happened understood why. Those who did not just thought he was professional. He was. He had learned it the hard way, from 5 words. On a Tuesday morning, that night Dean's daughter Deanna called. She called most Tuesdays. She could always tell something from her father's voice. Not what, just that something was there. Dad, are you okay? I am fine. Sweetheart, you sound tired. Had a long day on set. What happened? Dean was quiet for a moment. Just a situation that needed handling. Did you handle it, bot? I did. Good. Was it the right thing? Dean thought about the 47 people, about the 3 hours, about the folded script page in his jacket pocket, the notes in the margins, the scene he had been looking forward to. Yeah, it was the right thing. Then you did what you were supposed to do. That is all anyone can do. A pause on the line, the kind that happens when the person on the other end knows there is more. Did the person understand? The one you had to handle? I think so, eventually. Good. Because sometimes people need to hear something before they can understand it. Even if hearing it is hard, even if the person saying it seems cruel at the time. Where did you learn that? From you, she said. You taught me that. When I was 14 and I wanted to quit piano bar. You let me quit, and then you asked me one question. What did I ask you? You asked me if I was quitting because it was hard or because I genuinely did not love it. And I did not know the answer. So I went back and figured it out. And what was the answer? I genuinely did not love it. So I quit. And I never regretted it. But I never forgot the question either. Neither did I, Dean said. Neither did I. They stayed on the phone for a little while longer, talking about other things, ordinary things, the way families talk at the end of a long day, when someone needs the sound of another person's voice. Not for advice, just for the sound of it. Dean's voice sounded better by the time he said goodnight. Deanna could tell. That was why she had called on Tuesdays for years. Because she could always tell. The film was completed with a different actor. 3 days behind schedule. Dean paid for those 3 days himself. He told no one. His production manager found out 6 months later going through the accounts. He mentioned it to Dean. Dean said, "The crew lost 3 days because of a decision I made. That is on me." His production manager said nothing. He just nodded and never forgot it. That decision, the 3 days, the money. Most people who heard about it later thought it was about guilt. It was not. It was about the same thing 5 words had been about. The crew, the 47 people. They had lost 3 days of their schedules through no fault of their own. Dean did not think the studio should absorb that cost. He thought he should absorb it, because the decision to remove Richard had been his. And decisions have costs, and the man who makes the decision should carry the cost, not pass it down. A year later, Dean was casting another film. His casting director brought up Richard Hale's name, said he had been doing good work, said he had heard Richard had changed, was professional now, was reliable. Dean listened. He said, "Give him a chance on something smaller first. See what happens." Richard was cast in a smaller role on a different production. He arrived an hour early. He stayed until he was dismissed. He did not keep anyone waiting. The director reported back to Dean. Dean said nothing, but he heard. 5 years after that October morning, Richard Hale was working steadily, not at the level he had been heading toward, but working, respected on sets, known as someone who showed up, someone who prepared, someone who understood that the crew around him was as important as he was. He never worked directly with Dean Martin again, but Dean knew his name, and when it came up, Dean said the same thing every time. He figured it out. That is all you can ask. The producers who had heard the story began using it as a reference point. Not publicly, in private conversations, about what it looked like when someone in power used that power correctly. Not to punish, to teach. 5 words. And the dignity to walk away after. There is a way of using authority that makes the person on the other side feel smaller, and a way of using it that makes the space around you more honest. Dean Martin had used it the second way. He had not diminished Richard Hale. He had shown him the actual size of things. The distance between where Richard had been standing and where he thought he was standing, that distance, once seen, cannot be unseen. Richard had spent 3 weeks in his car before he understood it. But he had understood it, and understanding it had changed the shape of his career, changed the shape of who he was on a set, changed the shape of who he was in a room. 5 words had done all of that, over 38 years, without Dean Martin ever knowing. Dean Martin died in December of 1995. Richard Hale was 58 years old. He had been working for 30 years. In 2003, a film journalist was writing a piece about the culture of Hollywood sets in the 1960s. He interviewed Richard as part of his research. At the end of the interview, Richard mentioned a Tuesday morning in October of '65. He had not planned to mention it. It came out. He described walking onto the set, the sunglasses, the coffee, the 47 people, the silence, Dean Martin walking toward him, the 5 words. And then he said something the journalist did not expect. He said, "Those 5 words saved my career." Not ended it, saved it. Because if Dean Martin had not said them, I would have kept going the way I was going. I would have kept believing that my talent was permission, that my time mattered more than other people's. And eventually the industry would have finished me in a way that 5 words never could have. Dean gave me a chance to understand something before it was too late to change. He just did it in a way that I did not recognize as a chance at the time. The journalist asked, "Did you ever thank him?" Richard was quiet for a moment. I tried once. Years later, I called his office, left a message. He never called back. I think that was also his answer. You do not need to thank someone for telling you the truth. You just need to live differently because of it. This is not a story about being fired. People get fired every day. This is a story about what it means to use power correctly, not to punish, to teach, not to destroy, to redirect. Dean Martin had 47 people on that set. Each one of them was watching. Each one of them was learning something from what Dean did that morning. Not just Richard. All of them. They learned that the work mattered, that their time mattered, that the man whose name was on the poster understood this the same way they did, that nobody got a pass, not even for talent, not even for potential, not even for a name people were starting to recognize. There is a version of that morning where Dean Martin says nothing, where he absorbs the 3 hours, where he lets Richard stay, where the film gets made and nobody addresses what happened. That version protects no one, not Dean, not Richard, not the 47 people. It tells everyone present that the rules are negotiable, that if you are good enough, they apply to you differently, that the people who have less power than you matter less than you. Dean Martin chose the other version, the one that cost more, the one that required him to stand up, the one that gave Richard Hale the only real chance he was going to get. Think about the last time someone wasted your time, carelessly, without apology, and think about what you wished someone had done. Not shouted, not threatened, just said clearly this is not acceptable, and meant it, and walked away. That is what Dean Martin did, in 5 words, on a Tuesday morning, for 47 people who deserved it. The most powerful thing you can do when someone disrespects the people around you is name it. Clearly, quietly, finally, and then go back to work, not because naming it is comfortable, because naming it is honest, and the people who were waiting for 3 hours deserved honesty, not a managed silence, not a calculated tolerance. The truth, said once. by the person with enough standing to say it. Dean Martin knew that. He had always known that. 5 words proved it. To 47 people. To one actor who needed to hear it. To an industry that was watching. Columbia Pictures. Burbank, 1965. An actor arrived 3 hours late. No apology, no explanation. 47 people had waited. Dean Martin had waited. Dean stood up, walked over, said 5 words, and went back to work. 38 years later, the man who heard those words said they saved his career. Not ended it, saved it. Dean Martin never knew he heard that. He never needed to know. That was who he was. If stories like this are what you come here, subscribe. The playlist is waiting. These are the stories that matter. One set. One morning. 5 words. 47 people who deserved better. One actor who needed to hear the truth. One man who said it and went back to work. That folded script page. Scene 42. Dean's notes in the margins. He kept it, not as a reminder of that morning, as a reminder of what the morning was supposed to be. What the work was supposed to be. What everyone on that set had come there to do. Before one person decided his time mattered more. Deanna found it after her father died. In his desk drawer. A single page from a 1965 script. Notes in the margins. Folded once. Worn at the edges. She did not know the story behind it. She just knew her father had kept it, which meant it meant something. She kept it too. 5 words, said quietly, to one person, in front of 47 people. That is what respect looks like when it has something to protect. Dean Martin knew that. He had always known that. That was Dean Martin. 5 words, that was enough.